Hi, everyone. We are going to talk about your patriotic rhetoric, then and now assignment. This assignment is due at the end of the Revolutionary Americans module, but you can start working it at the beginning. There's a specific part that I actually would encourage you to start working on as you work through each lesson, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But just so we all have a baseline understanding of rhetoric. Rhetoric is the specific persuasive language that writers use to really draw their reader in. This is what makes an argument worthwhile, worth listening to, and worth acting on. So, we in this module will read several different foundational documents that contain some really rich rhetoric, things that were persuasive to make people ultimately commit treason against Great Britain and form their own country, what we now know as the United States of America. So, what you guys are going to be doing for the patriotic rhetoric assignment, you will be creating a poster or a series of posters. And you can do this in Google Docs or Google Slides, or if you're really creative and you have access to the software, you can do it in Adobe Photoshop or some other type of design website or software. It's up to you, but in simplest form, a Google Doc or a Google Slides presentation is totally fine. So what you will do to start off, you are going to select 3 rhetorical devices from this list here. We are going to talk about in this module rhetorical questions, allusions, analogies, the nuances of words, and parallelism. So choose any 3 rhetorical devices from this list. The second thing you'll want to do, and this is what I would strongly encourage you to do as you are working through the lessons, you are going to find example passages from the foundational documents that represent the rhetorical devices you chose in step 1. So again, I would encourage you to start working on this at the beginning of the lesson so you don't have to backtrack and hunt for things too much. But say right now that you are really good at recognizing rhetorical questions. Allusions sound interesting. You're not super sure what that is. And the nuances of words, you've never heard of that before. You'd like to know more of it. Okay, we've chosen our 3. As you are working through the lessons, if you see examples of rhetorical questions, allusions, or the nuances of words, I want you to mark those. You can create a separate Google Doc, or you might even just make a sticky note or something reminding you, hey, I saw an example of the nuances of words in slide 5 of a certain lesson or something like that, just so you know it's there. Or like I said, you could create a separate Google Doc and just copy and paste the example so you have it there. Okay, but you do need one example of each rhetorical device found in a foundational document. Okay. So step 3, you are going to create or find a contemporary or a modern day example of a rhetorical device. So ultimately, your poster project is going to be geared or advertised to high school students, or maybe even like late middle school. So maybe like 8th grade to 12th grade or so. So we want to make sure that we have an example of this rhetorical device that is easy for someone your age to understand. Sometimes those foundational texts are a little wordy, and so we want to have examples of both so you can see how they can work in different generations or different eras of literature. So you need to provide at least one example of each device that could be used in 21st century context. So that doesn't mean that you have to go find like a book that's written in this century and find that example. You can find examples of just sentences or maybe even common sayings that we hear today. So it can just be a sentence. It doesn't necessarily have to be something from literature for your contemporary example. The fourth thing you're going to do is you want to provide some type of instruction or explanation or a definition of your rhetorical device and include the 2 examples, the one from the foundational and the contemporary example, to support it. So this really could be as simple as just having a definition. If you need to go a little bit further beyond that, like this is how I always remember it. I have a cool way of remembering the difference between allusion with an A and illusion with an I, or if you have just had success recognizing it in other contexts, you can include that as well. But at surface level, you need to have a definition of each rhetorical device here. Okay. So the very last thing you will do for this assignment is you're going to take all of this information from steps 1 through 4, and you're going to combine it into some type of poster. And like I said, you can do this in a Google Doc or you can do it in a Google Slides presentation. But if you want to go beyond that, if you have the software and the means and the creativity to make something more sophisticated, you're absolutely welcome to do that. So for example, let me show you guys. Here's an example of what you might consider doing in a Google Doc. We'll wait for this to load. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I would encourage you guys to make it more organized, more visually appealing, but just so you kind of have in mind at bare minimum what information needs to be included in this. So I would maybe like at the top in, larger font, I would have my rhetorical device. And then maybe in a slightly smaller font or maybe even in a different font or style even, I would have my definition of the rhetorical device here. And then I might do something like a T-chart or something, to kind of show that I'm talking about the difference between two things. You don't actually need 2 columns there, I don't think, for this example. But over here, you might have your foundational text example written here, and that would, of course, be done so in quotation marks, and you want to cite the title and author below. And then the same thing for your contemporary example. And same thing, title and author. If that's applicable. You might find an example from modern day times that maybe doesn't have an author we can attribute to, and that's okay. But if you have one, you definitely want to list your title and author there. Okay. So maybe the last thing you would want to do, just because this is a poster project, I would definitely encourage you to go beyond and create some visuals or find some images or even like a cartoon or something really eye appealing to bring your poster to life. Remember, rhetoric is all about the art of persuasion. And so the more we can appeal to our audience, the better we will be in the long run. So think about it. If you're sitting in a classroom and if you saw a poster that looked just like this, if this is all we had with a white background and just some words slapped on the page, I don't know if we would all want to read that, right? So make it appealing, add some images, play with your fonts a little bit, really get creative with the poster. But at bare minimum, you just need to have the name of the rhetorical device, definition, or some type of instruction or explanation of how to identify it, and then your foundational text example, and then your contemporary example. And remember, you are doing this with the 3 rhetorical devices that you chose in step 1. So the last thing you'll do for this assignment is when you're ready to submit it, go up to the share button. That's not what I wanted to do. Go up to the share button and let's make sure that our share settings are set to services.live. Sometimes it sets to restricted, and if it is, I can't access your assignment. So make sure it's set to services.live, and then you'll be able to submit your assignment.